You're good to go.
They have no idea what we're doing.
We got it.
Welcome, everybody. Today is a wonderful day, and I really want to personally welcome each and every one of you and our new board directors and the district leadership and all the staff and the families, friends, and everyone. So today is a special day for us. So today is Tuesday, July 13th, 2021. And a meeting of the Salem-Keizer School Board is called to order. This public meeting access is also online, with the meeting also broadcast on CC Media, Channel 21. So I see all around, and so all our board directors, including the newly elected directors, are present. There's no one absent. So with that, I will move to reading the land acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is critical in building the necessary trust to coexist in harmony with one another. Indigenous tribes and bands have been apparent on the lands of the Willamette Valley, across Oregon, and throughout the Americas since time immemorial. In this valley, the ancestry of the Kalapuya reaches the furthest back in time, reminding us that this plentiful place has been called home by its original inhabitants long before the names of the snowy peaks and bountiful waters were re-identified. Today, we acknowledge that the people of this land still exist and inhabit this valley, not as heirs to it or as artifacts, but as reciprocal contributors to the modern society we live in. We forward our respect to the first peoples of this land, the 9 federally recognized tribes of Oregon, and those who have ceded lands here. We reflect on the displacement, removal, and genocide of the indigenous people that occurred throughout and beyond. In so doing, we truly honor the gravity of the past and endeavor to see that the people may live in harmony and equity on this land for posterity. May this acknowledgement carry resonance as a tool of peace over the land and waters we mutually rely upon. Please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. So thank you very much. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? So I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. There are no agenda modifications today. With that, we're going to start with the important ceremony of the day, swearing in of our new board members and student advisor to the board. So today we have newly elected board directors, Director Osvaldo F. Avila, Director Ashley Carson Contigam, Director Karina Guzman Ortiz, Director Maria Ineos trustee and student advisor to the board, Grace Caldwell. Now I'm going to turn this part of the ceremony over to Mr. Paul Decopoulos, who will swear in each board member and our new student advisor, one person at a time. Mr. Decopoulos?
Thank you. Where would you like me to do
Yeah,
this?
and I think I'd like you to do it out front. And if, I want to make sure that if we are pulling a new board director, if they're still waiting for family, we push them to the end. So if we'll, but
May I ask whose family is here? We'll start with
okay,
them.
perfect. Okay, all right.
Yes.
All Awesome. So it's Valdo, I think.
Just going to go alphabetically, so Mr.
Come out front.
Yep. It's the A in your name.
I, Osvaldo Avila,
I, Osvaldo Avila,
having been duly elected as a director of the Salem-Keizer School District 4,
having been duly elected for the Salem-Keizer,
as a director,
as the director for the Salem-Keizer School,
do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and truly
that I will faithfully and truly
exercise my duties
exercise my duties
as a school board director
as a school board director
for the Salem-Keizer School District 24J,
for the Salem-Keizer School Board District 24J,
consistent with school board policy
consistent with school board policy
and state and federal law.
and state and federal law.
Congratulations, you are sworn in.
Picture with your family first.
Go.
Picture with your family.
Yeah. Next.
That's your family here.
Yeah.
My son had to stay home, he's a little bit under the weather. So
Oh, yeah.
wife and daughter.
Need some spotlights.
Yeah.
Chapstick became my friend.
Sophia, she's going to be a 7th grader, and my wife had a 7th.
Awesome. Yay.
Have fun in volleyball.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt for a minute. The broadcast is only going in Spanish right now, which is super awesome for our Spanish-speaking families out there. And I think we're just going to check with CCTV if they want to get the audio feed fixed first, or if they want us to proceed. Technical
Is
difficulties.
there also YouTube going on simultaneously?
There is, but right now we're just hearing the Spanish version. Isn't that awesome? Yeah.
Were you going to go back there? I feel
Yeah,
like
I was
design?
going to, but I think that.
Is it by design?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, let me just check and see what they're thinking. board meeting, and we had some technical difficulties, and our Spanish-only channel was streaming on both channels. So we're going to start over with the swearing in of Osvaldo. If people are listening in, you need to go to channel 21 on CCTV. You can also pick up the English version of the YouTube on CCTV website. So if people would transition over there. We also have that notice up on the Spanish version. And Cheryl, our amazing translator, is translating in English on the Spanish channel for us. So we're in good shape. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Paul Dikopoulos, our legal counsel, to swear in Osvaldo. Yeah, just put that down.
Osvaldo, will you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Osvaldo Avila,
I, Osvaldo Avila,
having been duly elected
have been duly elected
as a director of the Salem-Keizer School District Board,
as the director for the Salem-Keizer School District Board,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and truly
I will faithfully and truly
exercise my duties
exercise my duties
as a school board director
as a school board director
for the Salem-Keizer School District 24J,
for the Salem-Keizer School Board District 24J,
consistent with school board policy
consistent with school board policy
and state and federal law.
and state and federal law.
Congratulations for your election.
Thank you, sir.
My husband left the room.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ashley's next. Okay.
We can wait, so.
Karina? I think Karina's next alphabetically.
Karina's next.
Oh, no, H.
We're waiting just a minute for her.
Is he F, G?
Karina,
Yep.
Go next.
Bathroom break.
Will you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Karina Guzman Ortiz,
I, Karina Guzman Ortiz,
having been duly elected
having been duly elected
as a director
as a director
of the Salem-Keizer School District Board,
of the Salem-Keizer School District Board,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and truly
that I will faithfully and truly
exercise my duties
exercise my duties
as a school board director
as a school board director
for the Salem-Keizer School District 24J,
for the Salem-Keizer School District 24J,
consistent with school board policy
consistent with school board policy
and state and federal law.
and state and federal law.
Congratulations, you are elected.
Come on. Yeah, there we go.
Yes, back now. My mom's not here because she went to. Yeah, I just texted her. She went looking, they came around. Okay, here she goes. She's coming. She's here.
She's there. You're going all the way over there, never mind.
If you can do there, because we've got the microphone, that would be great. Let's do it. Yeah.
They're gonna do them all down there now.
Would you raise your right hand, Ashley?
How's that?
Repeat after me.
I know.
I, Ashley Carson Cottingham,
I, Ashley Carson Cottingham,
having been duly elected
having been duly elected
as a director
as a director
of the Salem-Keizer School District Board,
of the Salem-Keizer School District Board,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and truly
that I will faithfully and truly
exercise my duties
exercise my duties
as a school board director
as a school board director
for the Salem-Keizer School District 24J,
for the Salem-Keizer School District 24J,
consistent with school board policy
consistent with school board policy
and state and federal law.
and state and federal law.
Congratulations, you are elected.
Has to say it in there.
I'm just gonna wait. big.
I have Altoids.
I know, I do. You just take it real like soft. Okay.
These microphones. Maria, please raise your hand. Repeat after me. I, Maria Hinojos Cressy,
I, Maria Hinojos Pressy,
having been duly elected
having been duly elected
as a director
as a director
of the Salem-Keizer School District Board,
of the Salem-Keizer School District Board,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and truly
that I will faithfully and truly
exercise my duties
exercise my duties
as a school board director
as a school board director
for the Salem-Keizer School District 24J,
for the Salem-Keizer School District 24J,
consistent with school board policy
consistent with school board policy
and state and federal law.
and state and federal law.
Congratulations.
I mean, I'm all for her staying.
You can sit here.
She would be bored by.
Junior.
She's like, we need more recess and more crayons.
Well, my daughter.
And lastly, we get to swear in your second student advisor.
Wow.
And Grace, if you'd raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Grace Caldwell,
I, Grace Caldwell,
as a student of Salem-Keizer Public Schools
as a student at Salem-Keizer Public Schools,
and as the appointed student advisor
and as the appointed student advisor
to the school board,
to the school board,
do hereby affirm
to hereby affirm
my commitment to represent all students
my commitment to represent all students
and bring the voice
and bring the voice
of all students
of all students
to the school board.
to the school board.
Congratulations.
Oh. Oh.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Decopoulos, and congratulations. We are so excited that you all have joined us. And thank you, family members, and all those who came to support. This is a very important moment. It's such a blessing to have all of you. Now with that, I'm going to turn the next item of public comments, agenda and non-agenda items to Ms. Sylvia McDaniel, Director of Communications and Community Relations, who will facilitate the public comment part of this agenda. She's joining us from another state, Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the technology we have here. So,
All right, board members, you received a copy of all the written public comment yesterday afternoon. Hopefully you had a chance to review it. And Director McDaniel is going to read the summary of the public comment. And you have a hard copy of the summary in front of you at your place. It's also the public comment, and the summary is posted on the website. And the summary is also translated into Spanish on the website. All right, Director McDaniel.
Can you all hear me?
We can, I think.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Shondaguri, Superintendent Perry, Board Directors, and all the newly elected Board of Directors. Welcome. Okay, written comment. Below, everybody, Superintendent Perry did mention that you all have a copy of this, so I'm just going to go ahead and read what we have. We have a summary of comments that were received through our public comment form, specific to this board meeting this evening. A total of 11 comments were received regarding the following topics. Board chair suggestion, monitoring data, welcome to new board members and student advisor. Restricting public comment, no trespass order, parent engagement concern, critical race theory, in-person board meetings. Board chair suggestion, wants Director Avila to be considered board chair. Monitoring data, writers want decisions based on data, not politics or emotions. Continue to collect data on expulsions and safety information and reinstate SROs if the data supports that. Welcome to new board members and student advisor. Welcome to the new board members and the student advisor. Writer believes this is a historic day full of hope and excitement. New board members are an example that will inspire students to feel hope. Members have a lot of work ahead, remove barriers that keep students from being successful. Restricting public comment. Writer is asking for the current board chair to not restrict public comment and to remove the policy of written public comments only. Also, writer no longer wants the board chair to have authority to silence speakers expressing opinions critical of the district and school board. No trespass order. Writer is concerned about videos on social media regarding this and is wondering if students are safe. Would like the prior board leadership to say why the resolution was necessary. Parent engagement concern. Writer would like the school board's interpretation of the law regarding parent engagement in policies, decisions, curriculum, and how parents and community are notified. Writer wants laws and policies stated. They feel there is very little engagement from the school district board with parents and community and wants to be part of the decision making. Critical race theory. Writer believes if you are going to preserve Confederate statues and plaques, then it is okay for white kids to feel uncomfortable learning about American history. Writer says America has nasty skeletons in the closet. You should not be afraid to confront them. Another writer wrote, does not support critical race theory and says this is not for the school to teach. School is for academics and truthful history. In-person board meetings. Writer believes it is time for the important conversations to be done in person at board meetings. It makes a difference. Several other areas, states are already back to in-person school board meetings. And that is the end of our public comment.
They need to go to CCTV. I'm going to continue to make announcements throughout. If you're tuning into the Spanish only, and if Cheryl, if you'd translate to English for me, go to the CCTV website for the English version of the broadcast, please. Thank you, Director McDaniel.
Director McDaniel, thank you very much. Now we are going to go to the next action item, among the first action item. This is the most important step for our election of a board leadership. So we will have the election of the chairperson. So this is the way it works. I'm going to request Mr. Paul DeCopoulos, who will give us some directions regarding how this election process of the chair works. So the 7 board directors to get to participate in this. And following the election of the chair, and the new chair takes over with the board, conduct of the board business for the vice chair selection.
Thank you, Chair Chandragiri. So the process is pretty simple. You can ask to be recognized, any board member, and propose a nomination of a board member. And as many people can be nominated as you choose. If there's just one nomination for board chair, then you'll vote. It's a public vote, and it will simply be a verbal vote. If there's more than one nomination, then we have a form that we'll be handing out so that you can vote. You'll need to put your name on the form because we have to read the results of the election for each board member. So that will only happen if there's more than one nomination. So, Chair Chandragiri, you can open it up at this point for nominations.
Thank you, Mr. Dacopoulos. And with that, any of the elected board members, please nominate the person you would like to be for the chair's position. Only chair, not the vice chair. So go ahead, Director Ineos Pressy, recognized.
I would like, thank you, Chair Chandagiri. I would like to nominate Director Avila for chair.
Thank you very much. I'm looking around, hearing no other nominations. 1, 2, 3. All right, there's only one nomination, Director Avila.
You're going to go ahead and vote.
So we can go ahead, we can vote by show of hands, and because there is no need for doing a paper ballot, correct?
Correct.
So, Director Ineos Pressy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Director Cottingham, Carson Cottingham,
Aye.
Director Hyen,
Aye.
Director Vice Chair Bethel,
Aye.
and Director Ortiz, Guzman Ortiz,
Aye.
Director Avila,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. With that, Director Avila, you are now the chairperson. Unanimous vote. Congratulations. So you're going to come and sit here, and you have your talking agenda here, and you can bring your folder. And with that, you will get your water also.
When we all went to look at
Go ahead.
our and we ran out.
Just your form.
Oh, thank you.
Flowers next to you. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate it. We'll continue on with the business, and so for us now to nominate for a vice chair. I'd like to, at this time, to take a moment to see if there's any nominations for a vice chair. Yes.
Director Avila. I'd like to make a nomination for Director Carson Cottingham for vice chair.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? I see none. So at this time, we'll take a vote for Director Carson Cottingham for as vice chair. How do you vote, Director Guzman Ortiz?
Aye.
Director Chandragiri?
Aye.
Director Bethel?
Aye.
Director Hyen?
Aye.
Director Carson Cottingham?
Aye.
And Director Ineos Pressy?
Aye.
And I, Chair Avila, also vote aye.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
It's neat.
Yeah. I was prepared for this. Clearly I was.
Now I want to take a picture of the chair.
I did open that water already.
Although they're not, I noticed nobody's helping us move our nameplates like they help you.
Uh-oh.
Shots fired.
Vice chair. Look here, please.
Thank you.
Oh, I won't drink. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Vice Chair Cottingham, please look this way.
Okay. So I believe at this time we'll move to section 4B. And I'll ask Superintendent Perry to ratify the collective bargaining agreement between the Salem-Keizer Public Schools and the Salem-Keizer Education Association, SKEA.
Right, thank you. And so the background on this, we've been in a shortened bargaining process with Salem-Keizer Education Association. Their contract expired, but all parties agreed that we would do a shortened process around salary and benefits. And huge appreciations to SKEA for the time they spent at the bargaining table, along with John, you and your team, for the time to get this agreement. SKEA has already put this to a vote, and the vote has passed. We got notified from their president, Mindy Merritt, last night that they did ratify and approve this agreement. So now it comes to you, which is a little awkward for new board members, but here you are with one of your first official actions. So this agreement includes the following: a 3% increase in the current salary schedule for 21-22, and a 3% increase in the salary schedule for 22-23. And a $25 increase in the employer-paid portion of the monthly insurance premium contributions for 21-22, and another $25 increase in 22-23. All other provisions in the collective bargaining agreement with SKEA roll forward until the end of 2023, and at the beginning of a few months ahead of that expiration, we'll begin with full successor bargaining. So with that, the recommended action is that you approve this and certify this collective bargaining agreement, ratify it tonight. You can then take a motion.
Thank you. And we came to the understanding that this was all done in good faith upon both parties. So at this time, I'd like to see if there's a motion.
I'd like to move that, propose that we accept as proposed.
Second.
Okay. And
You want
thank
to
you.
read a lot of names for the record.
Okay. So Director Chandagiri provides a motion, and I believe it was Director Hyen who seconded the motion. I'd like to call a vote now.
Discussion.
Oh.
Do discussion.
Discussion first. Is there any questions regarding this ratification?
So I'd like to keep a little background. So this was an important step. We went through a thorough due diligence, making sure that it balanced within our budget and it's affordable, so that we had to go through that exercise and make sure that it didn't cost anything. We also had to take steps to see how it compared with the other districts as part of our discussion. So a lot of not only good faith, we just spent a lot of time trying to compare. And so I think we felt that this was a good one, as a good, during this particular time, after all that has happened in our district. So it was done very well, and I really want to personally thank Superintendent Perry and John and everybody, Peggy, and they worked hours and hours and hours went into this. Sometimes very late in the evening, sometimes nighttime. So there's a lot of behind the scene work that went in. So I'm so glad that this came to this stage. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Director Bethel?
So I just want to say thank you to Superintendent Perry and your team, and also SKA. I think it goes to show the relationship that exists between our administration and our teachers to be able to move ahead, I think, as quickly as this did move ahead, even though I know you guys spent a ton of time on it. So thanks for doing that. And I'm sure Mindy's watching, but if not, if you could pass along that we appreciate her participation as well.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, now I'll ask for a vote.
Just say all in favor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Anybody oppose? I hear none. I vote aye as well, so I missed that. Okay,
Motion carries.
motion carried.
I feel like we should do a round of applause.
Yeah, there you go.
Chair, you did a good
We implemented applause when we came back in person, because it just felt good to applaud in person.
Chair,
It's
you
a
got
happy
it done.
space to be.
Yeah, it is.
Well, thank you.
Unanimous vote. Good job, Chair.
Thank you for everybody involved.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just want to make a comment. When you're chair, it's really hard to remember to vote. For everybody that's been chair, it's always a little challenging to remember to vote yourself, so.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll have to get used to that. When do I get to? No, it's-
At the end.
At the end, okay, I'll let you know.
Now we'll move on to number 5, section number 5 of our agenda, which is reports.
All right, so I'm just going to jump in with our reports, and we'll just go through these one by one, and I'll work through them on the agenda. The first one we always present is the superintendent's report, and Erin's going to be running the slides for me. The other thing we needed a reminder about is to be sure if you speak to bring your microphone down and speak into your microphone. The translators on the other end are having a little problem with hearing everyone. All right, so tonight I'm just going to share some summer school information. It feels like school is out, but really school is not out, and school might be in person more than it was for sure in September. So this is just a picture of our culinary, music, and migrant education summer programs, just as 3 examples of our summer programs. And we have 66 programs that have begun since the start of summer. A little hard to imagine. We have an estimated about 7,700 plus students that access these programs on a daily basis. 49 more programs are starting next week through the end of August. And it'll serve about another 7,000 plus students, including pre-K through grade 12. We have about 3,800 students, grades 6 through 12, who are targeted for credit recovery opportunities, and then about 7,600 that are targeted for traditional summer opportunities. One of the things we heard from our families with students with special education was the interest in not academics, but in social. And the summer school grants are really for academics and credit recovery for the secondary schools, but what we've done is an integrated model that they get both some credit recovery and some enrichment and activity at the same time. So I'm really proud of our programs. Nicole Eckelman has been a huge logistical person in this, including our transportation department. The transportation, the buses that run across the district, because kids can show up at multiple sites, or sites not in their home district, their home school area, it's a big puzzle. And also that we have about 22 schools that are closed for bond construction. So we've taken more kids in the summer, put them in fewer spaces, transporting them across the district, and for every one of our instructors and people that are participating, it's been a huge gift to our students this summer. And I think, Grace, you are a student.
Yeah, I do the Afrocentric program at Shemakata, and I'm really thankful for the program because some of these kids haven't been in classes for like 2 years, so they haven't been able to be social and meet new people. And I think that they really enjoy it because they can learn, and then they can go play games for 4 hours to go to the Croc Center. So I'm really happy to have the program.
Yeah. About how many kids are there? About 60?
I think we have 40.
40? Okay.
We were going to have 60, but some people couldn't make it. But
Yep. So thanks for
a
doing
good
that as
group.
well. Of course, you get paid, but thanks for doing
I'm
that as
thankful
well.
for that too.
All right, so summer job. All right, so we have a video that we produced about our unified programs that we're just going to quickly show for you to wrap up my superintendent's report.
So today we've got the Summer Unified program going on. We've got kids from every high school in the district. We're just out here doing some inclusive sports-centric activities.
Everyone is included, no matter your differences, no matter your background.
Unified is not just a program, it's a lifestyle. It's not one thing like soccer or basketball or cornhole. It's just a community.
Unified feels like a happy area where I can just talk, have fun, and have a great time with everybody who is joining this beautiful place.
The magic of seeing kids with and without disabilities interact, I think it's unique because you just don't see that a lot. There's not a lot of platforms for that, and so Unified has just provided that. Our students with and without disabilities have just been able to come together on common ground and just become friends.
So fun to see my friends again, and it's been a joy for me. So just that's it.
It's a blast. It's honestly what's making my summer right now.
Most like family. And everyone's my best friend. It's for our school community and our Salem-Keizer community, and just really understanding that kids are kids, and some have disabilities and some don't, but at the end of the day, students are students, and they're all part of Salem-Keizer.
All right, that ends my report for tonight. I can either open up for questions or we can just move on to the next report.
Any questions?
Are we planning on doing like programs like this next summer, or was it just for this year?
Yeah, we do summer programs every summer. The numbers of programs this summer are far expanded because we have some money from the legislature that was just for summer programs. So we do serve at times between 8,000 and 10,000 students in the summer. So our preschool programs have funding, our migrant programs have funding, our title schools do some, and credit recovery. So we do have some, just not to this extent.
Okay, I was gonna say, because I know about the credit recovery and the summer school, but these are like more enrichment based.
Yes, part of the dollars from the legislature for K-8 were designated for enrichment. So it was set, so you could only do enrichment programs, even though we weave in some reading, writing with that as well. Yeah, there's a little bit of that at that camp you're at. So that was specifically our lawmakers heard that what families really wanted was enrichment, social, getting kids to see kids play.
The pandemic.
Exactly. So it was a response to the pandemic. Great question.
Okay, I see no other questions. We'll move on to our next topic. Section 6, consent calendar.
Oh, sorry, I've got one more. Or
One
two
more?
more. Yeah,
Two
sorry.
more,
Two
sorry.
more reports. It's
My
okay.
apologies. Report B.
Yep. All right. So Director McDaniels is going to share a proposal we have for in-person board meetings and public comment. What we're hopeful for tonight is that you hear the proposal and give some feedback, especially to board leadership. And then the goal is that we will meet with board leadership after tonight and decide how do we handle in-person board meetings and public comment in August. So that's the purpose. We thought we would bring forward a suggestion to you and then get some feedback, and then I'll work with the new board leadership around this. All right, so Director McDaniel, it's all you.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Perry. Yeah, I'm gonna have to move my screen here a little bit so I can see. Okay. Currently, for the past couple board meetings, we have been focused on written comments. And that's because we rarely have had an opportunity to read those written comments that come to us. It opened the door for broader public voice on agenda items in advance of a board vote. The written comments went to the board the day before. They were able to take a look at those, acknowledge that they read those comments, and actually vote on the agenda item at the board meeting. So as we move to in-person meetings, we'll continue to include the practice of summarizing, as we've been doing, the written comments and sharing those written comments in the board meeting. Also include some call-ins and moving to in-person comments as well. Aaron? There is a new law that you may have heard or seen. It's HB 2560. It passed this session and it's effective, takes effect on January 1st, 2022. And it states that public bodies must allow reasonable opportunity for public comment. Salem-Keizer Public Schools will apply this law to its public comment format. So HB 2560 states, in summary, all meetings held by a governing body of a public body, excluding executive sessions, must provide to members of the general public, to the extent reasonably possible, an opportunity to access and attend the meeting by telephone, video, or other electronic or virtual means. If in person, oral testimony is allowed, submit during the meeting oral testimony by telephone, video, or other electronic or virtual means. And if in person, written testimony is allowed, submit written testimony, including by electronic mail or other electronic means, so the governing body is able to consider the submitted testimony in a timely manner. So currently, public comment opens on Friday when the agenda is posted about 5 p.m. and closes on Monday at noon, and that will continue. That is the proposal. This also allows us opportunity to actually have this translated as well and posted before the board meeting. The board will take comment in person, written, or by phone call, and all forums adhere to the sign up by Monday at noon. So everybody, whether they're going to be coming in person or writing in or by phone call, will all sign up by Monday at noon. So in person and call-in comment for action and reading items listed on agenda. So we will accept in person and call-in for action and agenda items. Written comment is welcome on other agenda items and non-agenda items of interest to the public. And the staff will continue to share the entirety of the written comment to board members on Monday afternoon. And then staff will read the summary during public comment at board meetings. So the chair will designate 30 minutes total time for public comment and allow each speaker 2 minutes, categorized as follows. So in-person comment, 14 minutes, and we could have up to about 7 people during to come in person. 14 minutes of call-in comment, and that would be about 7 people. And 2 minutes to hear a summary of written public comment. An additional time allowed to interpret oral comments into English. And just wanted to mention that we do have categories that people will sign up for, 7 categories. And that includes student, individual, teacher, organizations, et cetera. So you'll see the list when you go to the to get ready to sign up, you'll see the categories and you'll be able to select one. Is that the end of the slide, Erin? Is there another one? Is that it?
Yeah, and I'm just going to add a couple comments.
Okay.
So we don't have to implement the new law, but you're switching to in-person, so it makes sense to start now with the new law. If you only kept written comments, this isn't a suggestion, this is just as I'm reading the law. If you only kept written comments, you could do it just as you're doing it. When you open up for in-person, though, that's the place where you also need to allow the phone calling, or you could do video, but you have to allow access for people who can't be in the room. So that's how the new law is developed. The access via online for viewers, we already do that, so we've already met that provision in the law. And we haven't, prior to COVID, done the call-ins in the past. So prior to COVID, it was only in person, show up, give testimony. So the new law, I think, came as a result of all that they saw in COVID. So those are just some things to think about. Our suggestion was 30 minutes. This is just a proposal, so we wanted feedback on it to take to board leadership. The other thing that you can also do is you can say generally we're going to have 30 minutes. If you know a topic is going to need more time, so you know you have something that's controversial on the agenda, ahead of posting that agenda on Friday night, board leadership could make a decision to say, we're actually going to take 2 hours of public comment, this and X number of people do it in the same way. So you have the ability, if you, whatever you decide now, you can still change it as long as we post it on the agenda on Friday night. And in pre-COVID, we would do that based on how many people came in and signed up. So we would, if we knew it was controversial, and we would say, we're going to take 2 hours, or if we saw that we just couldn't get through the business, we would post ahead of time that we were just going to take 30 minutes. So you have versatility in it. We just have to get the structure, because behind this is a million details of how to structure it, because we open a Google form, we have people sign up, we have to have the time for translations. That's why we're hopeful to get feedback, and then to let our two new, our chair and vice chair, decide how you want to proceed. So with that, I'll open it up to questions or comments, feedback for your leadership.
So just to clarify, Director McDaniel, when you said that they're going to be categorized, is this on the sign-up form initially? You're going to ask them to pick a category? What's the purpose behind that?
There's always been a categories. I think there were 6 categories, and we added a 7th for specifically pointing out organizations that want to sign up and testify.
So did we have
So
that?
they do. That's always been there. So
Was it pre-COVID that way? I've never signed up for public comment because I've been here. So when we come in the door here, was there a category requirement then?
Yeah, there was a category requirement then that it evolved to, and the thinking behind that is that it gives range of comments. So if you have a topic and you hear from a community member, the association, a student, and a parent, you get range of perspectives, versus you have an organization sign up, or you have 10 people from one place that sign up all on the same topic. So the goal was to think about how do you get variety of
the community voice.
The community voice, yeah.
Okay.
So parents, students, partners, community partners.
I'm sorry, I just in follow up, just to give you feedback. I really liked the way we did it pre-COVID. I thought that people I'd like to think that my life is scheduled by myself, but it's not. And if I have an opportunity to present to a public body on the whim, I would like to be able to do that. So requiring a sign up to come in person before seems more restrictive than I would appreciate. I fully understand the reasoning behind it. And from a personal perspective, I would love to see this board not have 10 o'clock at night meetings. I think that if we're here to do what we're tasked to do with by statute to serve our community, to get the work done, and be available in the community like we've all committed to doing, we should do that. But I don't think we have to have it done in this space all the time. So I don't want to sit through 2 or 3 hours of public comment on a monthly basis. We're out in the community. We've all said repeatedly that we're available to the public, and I believe that we will be and will continue to be for those of us who've been here longer. So jumping through a bunch of hoops to get public comment, I don't know that that's a necessity, but I also I'd like to see this body get back to doing the business of the district and not just being a platform for particular messaging, because I think that we can build those relationships and work towards success outside of this space.
So I want to make one comment. When we were initially thinking about coming back in person, we were going to go back to the sign up at the night of, and then we realized this new law, and so we were that's why we put them together in that way. But again, if that's the will of the board, we'll figure out logistically, just as a proposal. So thank you.
Yes.
So
May I add also, I think the reason, can you all hear me? I'm sorry. The reason for the sign up as well, for example, if we have in-person comment and we have 20 people show up, not to say there would be, do we hear all 20 people and they all get 3 minutes to share their public comment? If that's the case, then we're looking at the long board meetings as well. So that's another reason why we suggested it this way.
Thank you, Dr. McDaniel. Director Hein?
So I was just wondering if we could do kind of a hybrid of that, where they could sign up ahead and pick a category, and then they could also, if they had the last minute, I want to go testify, come in and sign up. And I do like the categories because, sometimes you get 20 or people for the same thing, and you've got other people that are not being heard with different messages that want to be heard.
I have a question. Can you help me understand, or would this be, is yet to be defined of, let's say we have the 7 categories, different people sign up for these different, but we have 30 minutes, so how do we select who is going to provide public comment?
Yeah, we were thinking, and again, we'll have to talk and figure out logistically, we're thinking you take one from each category until you get through so if you had 10 people, but there were only 3 categories represented, you just take, in the order of sign up, one from each category and then start back on the top. We talked about random, but we didn't want anyone also to be in the place of saying, was it really random, So we were thinking to go, that's why the categories, to go through them in that way, was a thought.
So is that first come, first serve essentially?
It would be first come, do you see where, it'd be first come, first served by category.
By category, but it is whoever signs up first.
Or we could, if you feel comfortable with that, you could suggest a totally randomized process where we take the phone comments and pull them out. And so if you have concerns or some things you're thinking, just say them, because then we'll figure it out.
Yes,
Chair
Director.
Avila?
Yes.
Well, operationalize, I am completely in favor of public comment. And I really want to make sure that I go on the record to say I was the one who kept insisting on public comment in all modalities, even before this law. Now comes the question of how do you operationalize it and make sure that our meetings are going on for 7 to 8 hours, I want you to know. There was one time I remember we had people waiting to comment. If we had listened to all of them, it would have been 7 hours and 40 minutes more. We couldn't cover them. There were like 300 people who waited. Now comes the question of how do you pull this off if there are, say, 200 people coming there and sign half an hour before. And as a chair, you have to really find a way, because if you listen to some and they say we've come all the way, we've taken time off to come, and then some other category will get bumped. So operationalizing, so that became a very important challenge for me. I want you to be completely clear. Pre-COVID was in a way manageable because they would come with 10 copies of the comment and we all would listen. They would stand here and comment. It was fun, very nice, smoothly it would go on. Post-COVID, it was a difficult time for our community, so we had to really kind of adapt as we go. And there was a time, like I said, 7 hours and 40 minutes of unheard commentary. Then somebody else would call and say, we didn't get a chance to speak, or my video got cut and this and that. So I'm really saying we need to be fully available. Then if you start saying, okay, I'll only hear few and send others away, they're going to go unhappy, and so we are going to run into that kind of difficulty. I hear so many categories. Even if you pick one each, it'll be more than half an hour. I'm just using simple math. We are saying 2 minutes per person. What we had decided was 3 minutes per person, but we'll give equal amount of 3 minutes for Spanish translation. Then there'll be a Punjabi or a Persian person wants to do. So let's say if I come and speak in Tamil, then that has to be translated in English. Then it has to be translated in Spanish. So think of, my suggestion to the board leadership is please think of it. Can we have a totally different way yet get the public comment is what I've been thinking in my head. One other way I was thinking is, what if we intentionally decide to have say 3 or 4 of our board members go adopt each high school. Let's say we have zone 1 and zone 4 and use that high school and try to get the feeder community in that school to come. It could be like what we did with SIA. It was like a quasi open-ended question, some kind of thing. And then we got a lot more in-depth comment where people felt they were not rushed. So we kind of get into the meat of the issue, and then that was far more, and it led to such beautiful SIA task force, and you know the story. So that is another way to get public to comment. not just, because the 2 minutes is only to increase awareness. It doesn't give you anything more than that, here's the topic. But let's say we want to listen to the community in depth, sometimes they need time. We can't just cut them at 2 minutes and then say, and halfway through mother is crying and you can't cut them. So I'm just asking you to consider that as an option. So we can start having, say once a month, we can have just a listening session and people can sign up in that feeder community. Maybe, and intentionally we can take, say, zone 1 and zone 4 or zone 2 and zone 3, like that. So people see different directors from different zones sitting and listening to issue. It will reach the equity and diversity objective of our goal. And as a chair, we can come and report to you, or chair can join, chair and vice chair can join some of these 2, 2, 3, 3 pairs. So we can have both, and it gives us a chance to sit and listen to that, and then consider that when we make the policy decision. I'm just throwing that as an option, and it will still meet the public input requirement. We can announce it if you want. As long as it's 3, I don't think we need, or maybe 4, then we need to announce it. We can do all that, but it will give different communities a chance to listen, have interaction, and we can be interactive. We can, leadership can even say, these are the issues we are working, we would like to hear from you. So think of that as a model as well. Because SIA found that historically we did that for the first time. Close to, I don't know how many, close to thousands of families came and gave us a very good input.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director.
So I always recommend to the public, especially when we started, the COVID and all the issues, that they always submit email testimony. And then additionally, if they were wanting to call in or whatever, to do that. But since we sometimes would run out of time, I said, always send an email. So at least, we're hearing what you said, maybe not live in the meeting, but we're hearing you. So however we do this, I would recommend if somebody plans to come in or call in, or however we end up doing it, that they still always send an email, because we read those emails. We read every one of those emails, so.
Yes, Director Bethel?
And I just want to add for the new board members, and maybe you know this, but the last few months that we've had written testimony only, it's encouraged people to provide feedback to us on agenda items before we got to the board meeting, that allowed us to interact with staff before a board meeting to get a more in-depth knowledge on particular topics. I'm a huge fan of submitting in writing. I really wish people would do that more. But so I hope that doesn't go away. I hope the community continues to engage in that method so we can continue to grow and also be informed before the meeting versus trying to make a rush decision with potential unanswered questions of our own before a vote.
Yes, Director in-house Pressy?
So you'll have to forgive me since, I just came on the board. I'm wondering why we still want to have a summary of written public comment. Just from my other board position, we receive the public comment, but we don't usually have it summarized during the meeting.
I'd love to answer that.
Go for it.
So we asked for the summary because for me, and I can't speak for other board members before, but I want the public to know what feedback we're getting. And I think it helps the public for me know that since they can't engage with me all the time, they see the messages that are coming in and the decisions that we're making, and whether it's pro or con that information, they can follow along with us. At times, the staff were submitting all of the written testimony on the website, and it was taking a lot of staff time. And so they moved to a summary, and I think the full testimony is still provided. I just don't think it's right before the board meeting. And so it comes maybe the day after. Is Alice, is that right? I don't even know where she is.
She's nodding.
Okay. So that's why I asked for the summary.
Chair.
And just another question is, opening it up on Friday and then closing on Monday just seems like a really short time to me. Mm-hmm. I don't want to take up too much more staff time because I know that y'all are very busy. But is there any way to possibly extend that a little bit? Because I don't know. I know folks are busy. I even in my job, trying to get in a letter of advocacy at the state legislature I can forget about it, and even more so if it's just I have a 4-day window, 3-day window.
Yeah, we ended up with noon in part because we wanted to be able to summarize and translate the summary so that that was available. It was both of those. We felt that really big commitment to have it in multiple languages. So that's why we did it, and we wanted the board to have it in time. So we can talk about that as board leadership, and we can check in to see how much time what's the time we really need for that?
And it's because the agenda is decided on Wednesday night before the Friday posting. They have their leadership meeting on Wednesday, well, whenever day went, whatever
Or
time
sometimes
Wednesday. but the
Thursday,
Wednesday
yeah.
right before.
So if I can just fill in a little bit of the background, and I can also behind the scene explain. So just like Dr. Bethel said, the agenda is decided. Sometimes there's a lot of fast-moving targets and new topics come up. So we want to make sure we capture as much, because if we don't bring it to the action item or something, then we have to wait for a whole month before we bring it to the next month's meeting. So sometimes issues come up, so we'll have to be prepared for it. I mean, I also agree that I wish there was more time for me to sit and read all these things. And so it becomes very difficult if it comes out on Friday for community members to read and understand, or even if they had a follow-up question, to call us before they can write a comment. So people have brought it up with me saying, we don't understand, but what kind of question should I ask? So this is, from a community point of view, you're right. We need more time. Go ahead.
Yes, Grace.
So I was kind of confused about this, and I've had other people ask me about this too, because not everybody wants to sit through like 3-hour meetings. But I noticed that the law passed that you could have multiple methods of public comment. So do we just choose one form, or do we try and do all of them?
We can choose. If you do in person, you have to allow either phone or video.
Okay.
So that's the new legal requirement.
Okay, so do people submit in all forms, and then we just kind of choose what one we want?
We will state what forms we're going to accept, if it's phone or video.
Ahead of time?
Ahead of time.
Okay, that's what
And then
was
if somebody is on a call-in, what we do, they usually do call-in right away, but Aaron has the ability, because he has the phone number, so he calls people, so they don't have to sit.
Okay, I was just afraid that somebody would submit something through a different form, and then no one got to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, we wouldn't open it up if we weren't going to accept it.
Okay.
Vice Chair Carson Cunningham.
Thank you. I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add. I agree with so much of what's been said by all of my colleagues here. I just want to say thank you to Director McDaniel for putting this proposal together, and other staff. I think I'm curious if we can leave our record open at all, similar to what the legislature does. Like if we had a very heated topic or just a popular topic where people want to have their voices heard, can we leave the record open for additional emailed or written testimony to be submitted? Because then we could kind of modulate our time. If a bunch of people end up signing up, we could leave it to 1 minute in person, oral testimony with follow-up in writing. But maybe we could leave some of that flexibility in there depending on topic. But I'm looking forward to working with the staff, Superintendent Perry, Chair Avila, just to sort through. I know it will be logistically difficult for the district to implement, probably what, I think we all have this vision of it being like very, everyone can participate and whatever method they want, and everything will be translated. So making that all happen, I know is the most challenging piece. I do think that because of COVID, there's been a lot of, there's a lot of pent up energy, ideas, and people want to be heard. So I do agree with some listening sessions, maybe dedicated, broken up, maybe not the whole board at one place and time, because that would constitute a board meeting. But really having the public have the opportunity to talk with us, maybe outside of board meetings, will lessen the number that feel they have to come on the Tuesday night. But I'm just looking forward to talking more with all of you, and thanks for the work that's been done. It's clear that everyone on this board feels it's important for us to hear from the community in a variety of formats.
Thank you.
And just two comments related to some of the listening. Because we have new formats now with Zoom, sometimes we can do those for specific language families, which is also really nice. They have loved that when we've shown up for our Arabic families to answer questions. And then the student investment account will also have a process of needing to get some engagement again this year that would be another great place to plug in, because it gives you kind of a topic to go out and do some listening about. So I think it is time with the with COVID and reopening that we do some of that again. People just need to see people. So.
Chair Abila, can I add one more thing? So when we were going in this after the COVID, when people started submitting, one of the requests we made, and I think I don't know what, maybe superintendent can add, we decided to keep all the comment that was sent in the archives or attached to each of the board meeting. So just like Vice Chair, Carson Cottingham suggested, so anybody could go. But I like your idea of adding some more after the board meeting is over, so that it becomes like a listserv kind of thing, running, people can interact. I mean, ideally it would be interactive, but it's available. So you can go back and look at the archives of all the comments that came with each of the board meetings. So that way we just decided to leave it there, that the public can see what was said.
Thank you. Yes. I will continue to listen. We'll start all the way with Director Bethel, and then come
So
down.
I love the idea of having open opportunities. I would just say that we don't meet as often as the legislature, and we don't have compounded meetings before a decision is made. And so oftentimes we're making a decision once a month because we have one active board meeting and then one learning board meeting a month. And so it makes it a little difficult to leave open testimony as an option, with the exception of when we have multiple readings for items that are coming forward. I think that there's always been an opportunity to expand access to the agenda. I'm a proponent for trying to hit every platform possible to get people to engage. And I know that Director McDaniel's working with her communication team on really expanding those opportunities, and I would just encourage her to continue to move that ahead so folks can really see what is coming and really try to engage, even if it is a short timeline.
Thank you. Director Hyde?
So, yeah, that was very well put. That's kind of what I was going to say, but not as well put as Director Bethel. But yeah, usually the testimony coming in is based on an action item that we're going to vote on that night. And so leaving it open doesn't really help the public. I mean, if they don't like what we did, they can email us and tell us they don't like what we did, but we voted. And so for action items, we need to hear from them before we actually vote. Once we voted, it doesn't matter for keeping it open.
Director Carson Cunningham?
Thank you. That's helpful. I know I have a lot to learn about everything that we do here.
Maybe you're all in the same boat.
I think, that is another issue. I think that it's very difficult to adequately really absorb what the public's telling you if you have to vote immediately after. And so I'd really like us to explore options where we receive that input maybe the meeting prior to, and I don't know what kind of changes that may entail. Again, lots to learn. But I would say also keeping a record open, I'm not saying always. I would just say 24 hours or a day post, unless we've voted already. Find it out.
Yes, Director
I
Hyde?
was going to clarify. So frequently, if it's an action item, it was probably a first reading, usually the month before. And so there is that month of time where people have an opportunity to reach out to us. And they can even, if they look at the agenda, even though it's a reading, they can give testimony on their thoughts on that. So it's not, there are times when I came in thinking I was going to vote a particular way, and I heard very heartfelt testimony, and I changed my mind. But usually you've already received so much information, you kind of know where you want to go with that.
Thank you. I have a question. Director McDaniel, was there, and also Superintendent Perry, was there any community survey of what the community would like to see in the amount of time that would be provided? Any input that helped make this decision that you came up with the 30 minutes?
Let me go ahead and answer that. No, because we haven't made the decision. This is our first time to present it publicly, so you could, even in the end of July meeting, because we have a couple potential items that you need to have in a business meeting, you could add public comment and accept public comment just on the proposal. You can say, okay, here's our proposal, and you might modify this. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes. It can be a modified proposal. And you could say, here's our proposal, and we're accepting comment on it at the end of July. So we're bringing it to you for your decision so that you could get public comment on the public comment process.
Excellent.
How about that?
Thank you.
Chair Avila, according to our current board governance policy, you as a chair have to take a decision of what you want to pick and choose, how you want to do it, and you should have the ability to have the flexibility depending on the ground reality. Because our current board governing policy allows you to do that. So my suggestion would be, let's see how you can have the flexibility, because the situation will change. And I would like to see you as a board chair, you have the flexibility and decide today I'm going to take 30 minutes, or today I'm going to take 3 hours. Because if you lock yourself and change the policy, then you're stuck by the policy. Because sometimes you may have many action items that will take very in-depth time. And if you lock yourself saying, I'm going to take 30 minutes or 3 hours, then you have to be able to deliver that. And so my suggestion would be for you as a chair to keep that flexibility so that you can decide today's situation, or there is an emergency issue coming up, or there's a wildfire that we had to take a decision. So please think about that possibility also.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could we take a 5-minute break?
Yes, if there's any last comments regarding this public comment topic?
One suggestion I would like to see if chair and vice chair would like, I can write a little outline of what are some of the things pre-COVID, post-COVID, what are some of the things we dabbled with, and send it to you and see if it will be of some use, the context and the history that will give you some more in-depth understanding before you can make some suggestions for revisions.
Thank you, Chair. Director
Oh, I
Chandragiri.
know more now.
Thank you. All right, well, on that last comment, let's take a 5-minute break. And what time is it right now? It is 7:35, so return at 7:40. Let's get back to business so we don't try to make it as late as 10 p.m.
That's the goal.
Are we not ending at 10? Is that what you just said?
I do not want to end at 10.
On the record, all right.
At least not tonight. Didn't get my dinner in. A little nervous today. So thank you for these flowers here in my witness. So everybody's here, and let's move on to the next report, Ready School, Safe Learners, and Resiliency Framework.
All right, Mike Wolf, our Chief Operations Officer, is going to present this report to our new board members. This is our Chief Operations Officer, Mike Wolf. His portfolio includes finance, transportation, custodial, bond, maintenance,
food service,
procurement, food service, risk management, safety and security, and anything else, other duties as assigned.
Anything
There you go.
Superintendent Perry wants me to do is what it comes down to. Good evening, Chair Avila, Superintendent Perry, members of the board. So tonight, this section will be brief, and I know you may have lots of questions, and we're happy to answer them. But we'll be talking much more about our reentry plans as we get a little closer to. So we wanted to, the big shift here from where we've been since March of 20, right? And we've had through ODE and OHA, we speak in acronyms, so if you're not sure exactly what that means, that's Oregon Health Authority and Oregon Department of Education, along with our local public health authorities, both in Marion and Polk counties. We've been working with the Ready School Safe Learners framework, right? And you've probably been following along. You know that there were significant rapid changes in the beginning. It's sort of stabilized over time. And with this latest update, the ODE and OHA have come out with the resiliency framework. And just to give you a sense, the latest RSSL version was 88 pages. The resiliency framework is 21. So obviously a lot of things have moved out, right? It's the vast majority of the content is advisory. And that's the shift to local decision making, right? Which is where we want to be as a district. And so there are requirements that remain, mostly around the instructional component, instructional time, and also our disease management program. So just a quick reminder for the board that we have been, as a district, dealing with infectious disease, communicable diseases every year prior to COVID. And so as we're heading back into our goal, which is full-time in-person instruction in the fall, we feel that we will be ready to handle COVID-19 just like all the other infectious diseases. We have solid protocols in place. So that's our goal, and we'll be doing that in collaboration with our local public health authorities, which we have excellent relationships with both Marion and Polk County Public Health. And they've been with us the whole way. They're supportive of our approach, they're supportive of our protocols and our structure. We have lots of, we have developed structures over the course of the pandemic. We have a district health authority. We can talk about that in more detail at another time. We have a COVID-19 response team that tracks disease in our schools and our buildings, both staff and students. And we've been running a district operations center nonstop since the outbreak, just to give you a sense. So our goal, again, is full-time instruction, which would be back to the new normal in fall. Okay? Just to give you a sense of us transitioning to fall, beginning July 1st, just a few days ago, we implemented the following changes: that staff are not required to wear face coverings in district buildings or in school buildings when students are not in the building. Okay? Doesn't matter whether you're vaccinated or not, whether you have a vaccination or not. Staff are required to wear face coverings indoors at this point when in direct contact with students, and we're defining direct contact as within 3 feet for 15 minutes or longer. Okay? Students at this point are still required to wear face coverings indoors and on school buses until further notice. And the further notice is probably the next iteration of briefing that will come to you either later this month or into August as well. I would say we do understand that the best defense against any infectious disease goes right back to the basics, right? Cover your face when you cough and sneeze, right? Wash your hands frequently. And we will always have, our ventilation systems have always been working optimally. We've modified them. We pull in a lot more fresh air than we have in the past, and we'll continue to do those things. And we have one thing that we didn't have before, and that's the availability of vaccines. So there's our transition from summer to fall as we head into September. Okay. And then the last slide is just more of the changes that we made since July 1st. Staff and students are not required to wear face coverings outdoors under any circumstance. So if you're outside, you don't have to wear any other face coverings. We will continue physical distancing indoors at this point to try and maintain at least 3 feet whenever possible. Okay? And then unfortunately, due to an existing federal restriction, which is Code of Federal Regulations and the Public Health Service Act from CDC and Department of Health and Human Services, our school bus drivers our students and our school bus drivers will maintain, our school bus drivers will still maintain their face coverings as a requirement. Now, we hope that will change, but that's not something that we have any discretionary decision-making on at this point. So we'll have to wait for CDC and federal regulations to lift a bit on that one. That's kind of the difference between where we were with RSSL and where we are with the resiliency framework at this point in time. And I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Director Hyen?
Did you say that currently we are planning to require all students to wear masks? Did I misread that or mishear that?
Currently, students are wearing masks in our summer programs.
Okay.
As we head to the fall, our stated goal is for that not to be the case.
Okay, good, because I think they're bad for your lungs and there's other issues with masks, so I hope they go away.
Grace?
I was just gonna ask, we're going, like, when we made the 3 feet, like the direct contact, do we think about like the populations of schools? Because we're going like full time next year. So at McKay, there's like, I don't know, over 2,500 kids. And within the first week, we had already had a breakout with like a sports team. And I'm just worried that that's gonna happen again because we have everyone full time, 8 classes a day, all in the same classes, moving around.
Yeah, it's a real concern. I mean, it absolutely is a real concern. And as I'd mentioned, we have the protocols in place. Our goal is to minimize and eliminate to the greatest extent possible outbreaks, right?
Right.
And we do that with all infectious diseases, whether it's norovirus, measles, anything that comes into our schools or our buildings. We have the means and methods. We have a cadre of nurses, close to 27 nurses, and we will continue the District Health Authority, which is really our lead medical authority, to track and also mitigate any of the infectious disease outbreaks. So we've been running McKay and any of the other schools for years during cold and flu season.
Right.
And so we want to get back into that normal cycle, and we believe that we'll be ready to do that in the fall.
And then does each school have like their own individual team? So if there's an outbreak, they have like a team that's gonna like attack that or like get that organized?
Each school has a dedicated nurse, right? And so part of what I'd mentioned was the COVID-19 response team. So
Yeah,
we have a district approach where we're managing at the district level, but we're working with the school or building administration team as well. So there is a team. We also will also have the ability for the rapid antigen tests as well. And so we have the isolation rooms, you know, and we've got all of the protocols that we put in place during the pandemic that will be there as we move out of the pandemic, and then we'll just be managing and mitigating any outbreaks within a school.
Okay, thank you.
And Director Noah Pressey?
What's like the plan for whenever there is an outbreak? Like, what's the process to like notify other like students, the families, and then does that also connect to like, do you try to track if there's like, say one specific student that tests positive for COVID in this one middle school, and we know that they have siblings in like a high school and elementary school, and then the notification process for all those people involved? What does that look like?
Yeah, and so the notification process is exactly as you described it. There's notification to the school community that there's been a positive case within the school, and then we really move into the contact tracing. So then what we're trying to find out are those close contacts of the person, whether it was a staff member or a student, and that's another level of communication that goes out to those individuals. And so it's basically like an interview process with those individuals. And then that determines the level of quarantine. And so what we try to do is, you know, is we make sure that, you know, people get sick, buildings don't. So what we want to do is try to minimize the disruption to the entire facility to the greatest extent possible. And I think there was another part to your question that I may not have gotten to.
Well, I did like have kind of like a follow-up question about like, is this, how are we like sharing this information too? Like, because I know that before like ODE was like releasing some stuff about like outbreaks at certain schools. Like, is the district themselves like also like posting information for the public about it or anything like that?
We were reporting up through OHA and ODE. I'm not sure that that's still a requirement at this point. In fact, I don't think it is anymore.
I've not seen that as a reporting requirement.
Yeah.
We notify families, and then we notified about the response or the incidents within the district up through Oregon Health Authority. But I don't remember in that resiliency framework that that's going to be a requirement.
I don't think it is, and I think the local public health authorities are moving off of the tracking the level of data that they were during the pandemic. So its life after the pandemic could look different than what we're used to as far as communication. But right now, our protocols are still in place that we would notify the families, we would notify the broader school community. And then the contact tracing is the next level of interviewing to make sure that we can track the exposure.
Do you have like any like, I don't know, how like effective like the contact tracing has been in the district?
Yeah, we've done really well containing outbreaks and transmission. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the quarantine process worked quite well. Yeah, and we've also got, we've got protocols like check-in, check-out of facilities. So we have an app that all staff have where you have to answer the 3 questions, are you sick? No. In every facility that you enter, and that goes into a database so we can track movement of staff. If, in fact, they ended up coming back positive, we know the movement of staff throughout the district. And again, that's the contact tracing process.
And we had quite a few, when we went with totally closed to in-person, limited in-person, to more limited in-person, to hybrid. And in that time, we had to quarantine cohorts, but we didn't ever have a requirement where we had such an outbreak in the community that we had to go back to comprehensive distance learning, other than for quarantine cohorts. So that's our signal that the protocols and processes are working. Had we had multiple cohorts that had to be quarantined, we could have, with local public health, they could have said, this high school and the 2 middle school feeder areas, you need to move back to comprehensive distance learning. But we didn't have that extent of outbreaks.
Dr. Bethel?
So I think I can answer your question, but I just want to state that the district is still working, as it said in the slide, with the local public health authorities. So the Marion County Health Team is very active, involved with all the districts across their counties to make sure that there's a safe response to in-person learning at full capacity. And as an example, when we were in hybrid, my high school age daughter's volleyball team was exposed. And so so my daughter was sent home, notified there was no practice. I got a call from the school nurse within a few hours that, contact trace at the school level. And then 24 hours later, the health department follows up with a contact trace. So there's 2 teams of people engaging the community to really work hard to get that information to try to help people understand that there's a potential exposure. And then for teachers, through that app, it's not maybe necessarily just that they might be contagious, it's that they may be exposed. And the district can trace them to all the buildings to eliminate additional exposure or spread throughout the district. I'm very comfortable with the level of involvement, and the school nurses are exceptional with their calls and repetitive calls until they talk to you.
Sounds good. Director Chandagiri and then Director Guzman Ortiz.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. So at one point in time, we discussed that each school will have a map or a contact person. So in that way, if the community wants to get what is the layout, who are the contact person, to clarify what is the steps we can take. So are we still having that plan?
Are you talking about the blueprints?
Yeah, the blueprints for each school, so that the local community or parents want to know the kind of questions that we are asking.
Right, how we were handling the requirements in RSSL. Now that RSSL has moved to a resiliency framework, we'll be transitioning to basically an operations plan. So to the extent that what worked during the pandemic would help us in the reentry, we'll continue those protocols. I don't know to the exact detail yet at this point, but just conceptually, we think that, for instance, each site has a dedicated physical distancing and safety coordinator. We think those are good roles to continue to have as we head into the fall. Because remember, we've never done this before, right? This is our first pandemic, and so coming out of the pandemic, as much as everyone would like things to be back to the way they were, they never will. And so we have to figure out that next transition. And the July 1st was our beginning. You see the changes we've made as a transition to the fall, and in the fall, we'll be ready to handle the new normal.
In other words, is there like one go-to person for each school so that parents have such questions? Can they just at least call and see, okay, what, that way, that's all. That way, there is a level of somebody who can be like a go-to person each school.
Generally, the administrator on site is the physical distancing coordinator and the leader of the safety team. So what would be normal for other operational questions, the parents can always contact the school principal. If they can't answer, then they ask a school nurse or get the district health authority to call them back. So the first stop is always the principal.
Correct. That way we can decentralize it, families can. Thank you very much.
My question is about quarantine. Can you help me understand what does quarantine look like now? I know that we've gone through 7, 10, 14 days over the length of the pandemic. So what's within our scope to be able to enforce that? And while students are quarantining, I imagine there's still going to be an option for virtual learning. What are our thoughts?
Yeah. We're still trying to work through all of those details with both Marion and Polk, and we'll need to get the specific direction from Oregon Health Authority on, and that will obviously flow from CDC as well. So again, as we head into the fall in the new normal after the pandemic, I'm not sure exactly what those details will look like at this point. And for all I know, there may not be a quarantine period. It just may be like any other infectious disease at that point, where we just manage the outbreaks, try to mitigate and eliminate the outbreaks.
And one of the things we'll do every single meeting, you will always have, until school starts, a report on this, because the guidance will change. So I think the next one, set of guidance is supposed to come out around the 22nd of July. So I put quarantine down on my list of things to talk about next time if we have the CDC guidance. Because it's different for vaccinated versus unvaccinated people, and same recommendation on face coverings. And do you just go one, all, none? Do you allow choice? You know, how do you navigate this world of some vaccinated, some not, some face covering, some not?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thinking about people, if we're tracking outbreaks, then can people have that option of quarantining or waiting for an outbreak to settle down? And how do we allow families that flexibility? So.
Yeah. Great question. All right.
Any other questions? I'll just say thank you, Michael, for this. In my job, I get to work with ODE, partner with them, and listen into the SSA rules and participate that throughout the entire year, and also get called upon by Director Colt Gill, and got to learn about this framework. So I've been part of those conversations along with other community members throughout the entire state. So I love to see the collaboration, the input, and the investment that OD has taken upon the place of inviting community guests to make sure that they're incorporating their voice, and it's showing here. So we can reflect that onto our district.
That's great. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. Colt and his team have done a phenomenal job through this, by the way. He was the right person for the right time. Yeah.
And the way he has gone out and got the community input, and then it's in the framework, so we don't have to do that across every community the same way, is hugely helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so our next report is going to be presented by Dr. Suzanne West, who is our Director of Strategic Initiatives, and she's going to present on the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. And I would give you all the things that are under Suzanne, but she said today that she thinks anyone doesn't know what to do with, they just email her as a director. So this is truly the job of other duties as assigned. But in the beginning of the pandemic, she helped us stand up our Edge Online Academy. She has a background in technology, education. She's been an elementary principal. She's been a district level leader. So other duties as assigned is all kinds of good when it comes to Dr. West. So Suzanne West.
Thank you for that, Superintendent Perry. Chair Avia, nice to see you tonight. Congratulations. And directors, new and veteran, good to see you tonight. Some of you have heard a little bit about ESSER previously, so it may feel like a repeat for those of you who have been immersed in this for the last couple of months. But it's important for us to revisit it because it's an important initiative for us for at least the next couple of years. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time giving you an overview, and where I'd actually like to start is with this handout that is included in your folder this evening. I'm not going to go through this in detail with you, but it's a good place to start because school funding can be very complex. The most important thing to remember about school funding is that the state school fund is what we rely on to drive all of our general operations. That's why we care so deeply about what the co-chairs decide every year and what the legislature does in terms of how they fund schools for a biennium. So the state school fund is really the key driver for educational programming. And we have access to a plethora of grants that helps support some additional efforts for student groups and programs in our school district. Our school district in particular, because we are so diverse, have access to a broad range of grants specific to many different student populations, such as our migrant population, such as Native American students, students experiencing poverty, and many other different groups of students. We receive quite a bit of federal and state funding to support these programs, and they do a lot of good for our students. What is unique this year among our grants is that we have access to ESSER. ESSER has functioned in school districts a little bit differently than many of the other grants that we have access to, in that most federal and state grants come with some very specific criteria for how those grants can be used. For example, the grant that we receive for Title 1A, which is for students who are experiencing poverty, that has some very specific criteria in terms of what we can fund, which students can benefit from those programs, what the poverty thresholds are for schools that can access those funds, and we have to be really tight in how we use that. The difference with ESSER is that when it was first legislated into law, the federal government said, use ESSER the way you would use your regular school funds, any allowable expense under the ESEA legislation, which is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So that allowed us a lot of flexibility in terms of how we used ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 in particular. So that was different in terms of how grants are normally given to school districts. So we've had actually 3 different iterations of ESSER. ESSER 1 and ESSER 2, as I said, were quite flexible in terms of how they could be used in the school district. And I'll share in just a couple of minutes some of the ways that we've used that. There is a significant difference with ESSER 3. ESSER 3 comes with some requirements that over the next several years as a school district that we're going to have to monitor and follow up on and put some bumpers around in terms of its use. ESSER 1 was the CARES Act. Many of you have probably become familiar with that through the news, if nothing else, because there was a great deal of media attention to the CARES Act when it was first legislated. ESSER 2 is the CRRSA Act, and ESSER 3 is known as ARP ESSER. More commonly, people just say ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3. And we'll be talking primarily about ESSER 3 tonight. All of these grants come with timelines, and you see the timelines up there. What I want to point out with the timeline is that you'll notice there's a solid line and then a dashed line. The solid line is the time frame that we have to obligate expenses. And by obligate, I mean determine how we're going to pay for things and then set about encumbering those expenses. The dashed line allows us to extend those expenditures a little bit further, a year longer, if we have those expenses obligated. That's important for us for the expiration date that you see up there, September 30th, 2023. That is the expiration of the ESSER grant. However, if we do have some expenses that are already obligated as of September 30th, 2023, we can extend payment of those obligations to September 30th of 2024. So there's a little bit of latitude in there. What's important to recognize with this timeline is that we can't incur any new expenses beyond September 30th, 2023. So we are very mindful of that while this grant is incredibly beneficial for us as a district, for all districts that have access to it, it is not permanent. Whereas many of the other grants that you see in that document that has been shared with you, we know that we will continue to receive those grants year after year after year. Even though the level of funding may fluctuate in the grants, we know that we will continue to receive Title 1A monies. So we're mindful of that. Some of the key authorized expenditures for these ESSER funds include responses to COVID-19. That's an important consideration. So as we're making decisions about how are we going to expend these monies, the question we have to ask is, can we justify that this expenditure is in relation to COVID-19? The other considerations are learning recovery and supports, and I'll get to that in just a moment here, maintaining continuity of operations, and then capital improvements are also an authorized expense. Again, all of these fitting within that umbrella of COVID-19. So this isn't just a candy jar that we get to spend however we want. There are some criteria associated with it underneath that large banner of response to COVID-19. So talking specifically about the ESSER 3 requirements, in order to access ESSER 3 funds, we've had to make some assurances to the state. And the state has asked us to ensure that we allocate a minimum of 20%, and this is actually written into the legislation, 20% of ESSER 3 to what's called unfinished learning, that we have plans for safe return to in-person instruction, that we follow some reporting criteria, which the state has not fully defined for us yet, so we're waiting to hear what that's going to look like, and that we have an engagement process as we determine how we're going to expend these funds. Just a couple of notes about a couple bullet points on here. So the minimum 20% allocation to unfinished learning, we're actually planning to spend quite a bit more than that. For our district, for ESSER 3, 20% would be about $20 million, a little bit less than that if we were to stick to just that minimum. We're planning to spend at least double that amount strictly on unfinished learning. Specific to the engagement, share with you here, what we have done to engage folks in our community. This is one of those rare opportunities where we can go back in time just a little bit and really benefit from a robust process that took place prior to the COVID closure. Some of you were involved in our SIA task force in that effort to engage the community deeply around the things that our community felt were really important to the education of our students. ODE has specifically told us, use that. That was a very robust process, and we learned a ton through those conversations. So ODE has said, you don't need to go out and redo that again. Use what you learned through the SIA engagement process. They've also told us throughout the last 18 months to use what we've learned through our surveys, and we've done several of those. We've engaged in surveys in our Families with Panorama, for example, as you see on the slide there, where we've been able to ask our families, how are things going? How is your student being supported? So we use those data to inform our plans around ESSER 3. In addition to that, we've engaged directly with the groups that you see listed on this slide, and that includes our association, SKEA, our Native Education PAC, our Migrant Education PAC. We've engaged community groups like our coalition, Salem-Keizer Coalition for Equity. We also specifically went out to our adjudicated youth. This was a group that was not called out in SIA specifically, but is called out in ESSER. So we've particularly engaged with that group through the different connections that we have through group homes and other facilities within the broader Salem-Keizer area. And we have some contacts who have helped us with that. We've engaged our Pacific Islander families. Through all of these different engagement processes, a few themes have emerged. So those themes have included before and after school enrichment and support opportunities for students, math literacy level transition and graduation support, authentic learning opportunities. And what we heard around authentic learning opportunities is that our community wants our students to see the relevance in what they're learning. So that emerged as something very important. It's important to us too. So we do have a focus on that. Social, emotional, and behavioral health supports. And then the hiring of diverse staff continues to come up over and over and over again in these engagement situations. So what are we doing with this information? Here's our response to unfinished learning. We're targeting class size reduction at elementary and secondary schools. And an example at the elementary level is that in 18 of our schools, we are adding some additional staff specifically to reduce class sizes in grades K1 and 2. just an example of the rationale process that we went through to make a decision like that. We know that we have in the fall a large cadre of students who will be starting kindergarten who maybe didn't have an opportunity to attend preschool or who attended preschool virtually for most of the year. We know that the first graders who will be starting school, most of them spent the majority, if not all, of their kindergarten year attending virtually. So we want to make sure, and same for our first graders moving into second grade. So we want to make sure that for those youngsters in particular, that we make an effort to have smaller class sizes, more adult to student attention, to accelerate whatever learning may not have happened during the past year. And we really are taking an accelerated learning perspective here. We want to make sure that we aren't focused on remediating and trying to reteach what may not have been taught for the entire last year, but determining what do students know. Let's build on that strength and accelerate their learning so that we get them where they need to be at the end of this upcoming school year. We're focusing on transition supports for current and rising grade 6 and grade 9 students. We are adding social workers and classroom behavior support. We're adding support for seniors in particular, these upcoming seniors who may be at risk of not graduating. We're adding additional support for new teachers. This is a big one. So we are similar to our kindergartner, first grade, second graders. We have a cadre of teachers in our system right now who spent most of last year, their first year teaching in a fully remote environment. And we know now as we transition to in-person instruction that those teachers are going to need some more support to develop the skill set to become really good teachers, which is what we want for our students. So we're investing in some additional district mentors to provide some direct support to those new teachers. We're actually increasing that support also to the new teachers who were not only hired this year, but will be hired next year as well. So instead of just a first-year teacher cadre, we're doing a year 1 and 2 teacher cadre with these new mentors to make sure that, again, these new teachers have a really solid footing as they support and educate our students in the coming years. We're partnering with CBOs. This is something that I personally am really excited about. We do a lot as a school district to support our students, but at some point students go home. And we know that we have many organizations out in the community who are standing ready and already supporting our students in many ways. So we're going to use some of these ESSER funds to support those efforts. And more information will be coming about that soon. We're just about ready to put forth some requests for proposals to start engaging with our community-based organizations. And then the last bullet point you see on there is as important as the others. Even though the strategies that we've already outlined there, we believe based on research and evidence that these strategies will make a difference for students. This last one is really where the rubber meets the road at the school level, because we can make good inferences based on what we know about education and decades of research. What we can't do, the people that you see sitting at the table here, is tell you what that student who's sitting in room 210 needs right now. It's our teachers, it's our classified staff, our support staff, it's our school administrators working with that student today or come September, who really know this is what our students need right now and what we think will make a difference for moving their education forward for the upcoming year. So we're going to give teacher teams an opportunity to apply for some innovation grants. So when we have those educators at McKay, for example, who get together, they have that conversation and say, this is what our kids need, we just need a little bit of money to make it happen. They can turn in a very simple application to us. We'll go through an evaluation process. And we hope to give out lots of funding to our school-based colleagues so that they can make some really good things happen for students. And that concludes the presentation. So what questions may I answer for you?
I'd like to know what the increased social worker and behavior support looks like, and I don't know if the district's taken into consideration the use of behavior support instead of adding something like success support, where it's framed, the terminology could be framed leading towards success and not a deficit.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's a two-part question, I think, so I'll start with the social workers. So we're adding enough social workers so that we have one at each of our secondary schools, so all of our middle schools, all of our high schools. We will have support within feeder systems for our elementary schools. We do not have enough social workers to have one social worker at every elementary school. But we believe by adding the social workers, particularly at the secondary level, that we'll be able to meet many of the needs that we've been tracking internally, both through direct work with students as well as information that they're sharing with us through surveys and cafes and through other mediums. So that's the social worker strategy, and we're actually working on a methodology to evaluate the effectiveness of social workers and their efforts in the district. We don't quite have a quantifiable measure for that yet because so much of the work they do is qualitative. It's about those relationships and connecting kids directly with the supports that they need or that their families need. But we're working on a way to quantify that in some way. In terms of changing our language to a more strengths-based model, I love that. And we're doing some of that work now already and need to do more. So an example would be at our secondary level at the high school, up until this last year, we had what were known as discipline APs, discipline assistant principals. Over the last year, we've changed that terminology, so it's behavior assistant principals, so the focus is on supporting student behavior, positive behaviors, and not on disciplining students. So I completely agree with you that small changes in language like that, they seem small, they can actually have really significant outcomes in the relationship between students and the adult that's trying to support them. So I appreciate that suggestion. That's something that we'll definitely take back.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to just add real quick that the highly consideration of culturally relevant and culturally competent social workers and these type of academic coaches that can really reach students who need the most attention, that can help understand their background, their life experiences. But I think Director Chandri had a comment.
Well, I'm a retired chair, so I'm just a simple board member now. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair Avila. And Dr. West, this connections with different community organizations so that we can really harness their potential. Will there be any technical assistance or grant writing support provided to, say, African American community if they have a nonprofit, or say Chakosi community which may have a nonprofit, because they may not have the expertise or agency or technical expertise to write a grant and apply, yet there will be small pockets of communities which may not be able to meet the federal requirement or our school's requirement. What kind of technical assistance we can provide?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question. Just this morning, I had that conversation with another administrator in the district who's going to support us with these efforts. The tricky thing in regards to providing that support is that whenever we put forth a request for a proposal, what we provide to one, we have to provide to all. So what we can't do is, for example, work with just the Salem-Keizer Coalition for Equity on how to write a grant. That would not be a fair process. So what we will need to do and what we plan to do is to provide that support to anyone who needs it. We don't yet have worked out what that will look like. But we will need to offer that to anyone at all who would like to submit a proposal for us. It looks like you have an idea.
I would like to, because when you start looking from an equity point of view, there are some small communities who get left behind, and they get left behind every time. This is what happened in, I believe, in 2016 when the African American students legislature had a whole thing, and Salem had what 2 or 3 ideas went up. We didn't get that bidding because Portland took it away.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, but if you look at it from a strictly equity point of view, is there a way to budget in? Maybe we can have a third party or a separate community entity that can be contracted to provide that kind of grant writing technical expertise.
Yeah. We
And-
actually have done that, and that's how we've navigated it. Because
Correct.
the African American grant, for example, the district hired a grant writer to support those applications.
Correct. And that could be built into the budget of the SR if anybody wants to use it. As long as we offer it, if somebody doesn't want it, they don't have to use it.
Correct. So we can't force anyone to take advantage of the offer. You're absolutely right. But we do need to offer it to everyone. So procurement laws don't, and Mike, you could jump in here. Procurement laws don't necessarily have an equity lens. Procurement laws are intended to ensure that everyone has access to the bidding opportunity. Anyone who feels like they have a service or product that can meet the terms of the request for proposal. I agree with you. We may need to provide different supports to different groups, but we have to be very careful about what that looks like, and what Superintendent Perry laid out is one way that we can approach that. We need to do a little bit of investigating, because I don't know if we can pay a third party to support a proposal for our own organization.
Exactly.
So we just need to be very careful and mindful of procurement laws in that process.
Chair, Director, everyone's chair today. Director Guzman Ortiz.
I had a question also about the CBO partnerships, and just curious what we're looking for there, and if we are gathering feedback still of what our students and families might want or desire or need in terms of what these partnerships might look like. And alongside, I'll tag along because who knows when I might speak again. What does our engagement process look like? Is that happen and close, or is there an ongoing engagement process with students and other partners?
Yeah, 3 fantastic questions. So let me see if I can remember all of them. So
Thanks for tracking.
Yeah, I'll start with the last one. So what does ongoing engagement look like? That's something that as a district we're having regular conversations about right now. So we do have some mechanisms already built for ongoing engagement. I referenced earlier cafes. That's something that we started this year. It's been wildly successful. We're receiving great feedback about it. We intend to continue that well into the future. I see you nodding your head, Grace. If you participated.
Yeah, can I say something quick?
Please.
I prefer the cafes and like the student engagement groups, because the what's it called, the panorama?
Panorama.
They're like 40 minutes or 20 minutes are long, and I know that they're not doing them. Like, I know I didn't even do mine. And they
Grace. Oh, Grace.
Now you kind of
Scratch that from the record.
Yeah.
I might have done it, I don't know, but they're
I'm
just
sure you
so
did. I'm
long,
sure you
and I know that people aren't doing them. So I think the cafes and like the little student engagement projects, they're better, and like you actually get to talk to students. It's not just like, I'm gonna click this, I'm gonna click that.
Right, exactly right. And that's a great example. We also have our SIA advisory group that meets regularly, and they have been excellent about sharing with us the pulse that they have in the community and their thoughts about how we should support students. So we are not perfect, but we are getting better at building into our systems these regular engagement opportunities for both students and community. And then we have regular touch points with staff as well. So Superintendent Perry over this last year has hosted a dozen more live events.
Feels like thousands.
Thousands of live events directly with staff across the organization, where staff have an opportunity to ask questions directly of us, and we respond in real time in the chat. We engage directly with our associations at their meetings. I will say, in terms of this last question about ongoing engagement, one of our learnings this past year that I believe we'll hold on to is that we can do a lot and engage deeply with more people remotely. 18 months ago, I don't know that any of us would have said that. We would have been looking for a big conference hall and trying to figure out how we're going to get 500 people there. Having a video call today with 500 people on it is nothing. So I think we're going to hold on to that as a means to continue engagement into the future.
I really want to congratulate Superintendent Perry and all our district. I really want, before this Microsoft Teams and this audio video real time came, just to illustrate, I think it's, if I may be wrong here and there, but within 3 weeks they made like 120,000 video audio calls in real time. Now that, literally equity was in a totally different way we measured. We could now see the child, the family, and the families appreciated getting an opportunity to privately, because some of these things in a group, if you make them sit down, they're not going to share. Sometimes it's like painful. But in this process, the teachers they're like the first responders. They're like the first responders keeping our community alive, literally. So I really want to appreciate, as much as the COVID caused all the tragedy, but with that also we saw the beautiful humanity of our teachers, because they were literally keeping our children and the family, and they were literally like the only hope for thing. So thank you very much. And with that, they gathered a lot of information, which was literally gold mine of information in my thing. This is the best listening sessions our teachers did and staff did. I don't know, that's my bias.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've learned a ton. Your other two questions specific to are we continuing to engage around ESSER? Yes. So there are some additional groups that we will do some outreach to in the next couple of weeks here. And because this is a temporary funding source, we're going to have to probably sometime around December or January reevaluate where we're at in terms of expenditure and solicit some additional feedback as we adjust. So it's not a once and done. We're going to need to treat this as an iterative process, at least to the expiration of the grant. Does that answer all your questions?
Can you tell me a little bit more about what we are looking for, or what we're thinking
That's
about in
right.
terms of the CBO partnerships?
Yeah, thank you for the reminder. So that's a great question too. So a few things that we're thinking of including in the RFP and writing it broadly enough that our CBOs can also be creative. But a few things that we're thinking of including would be before and after school tutoring support for students. May include what we loosely refer to as a learning pod concept, where students can be transported or go to access Wi-Fi and to have adults on site where they can support the students' learning as needed. So that's another option. We're looking at, in some cases, enrichment opportunities for students, and I'll give you an example of that. During the pandemic, we put out an RFP for support for students similar to what I've just described that the Kroc Center responded to, and they were able to provide a learning pod environment for students, and as part of that process, they also gave students access to all of the club facilities. So not only were students being supported in their academic needs, but we're also receiving some enrichment opportunities. So we're looking for that, but in addition to that, we want to include in our RFP suggestions for our CBOs to support families. So one way that might be done is through providing English classes to parents or families that feel that they need them, or ready for kindergarten classes, which many of our community-based organizations already provide. So we're looking for those types of proposals in addition to other creative ideas that community-based organizations have for how to support students, all under the relative banner of unfinished learning. Again, it has to be related to COVID. It can't just be for anything.
So could that, I'll call on Director Bethel and Director Carsey-Cunningham, but could that also include, I don't know if there would be a CBO, if this is a group of therapists who provide, long hours after 5 o'clock, because a lot of our therapists, and I want to learn more about who we contract with right now, so that our families who are working 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, that they have actually somebody to be able to contact at 8 or 9 p.m. To receive those services.
Yeah, that's a great question too. I see Superintendent Perry making a note. We do have a very robust network of mental health providers that we partner with, and I bet you a nickel the note she just wrote is to bring that to a future report.
So, Director Bethel?
Can you go back one slide on your
Yes.
presentation? So there's kind of a,
one more?
yeah. There's like a reoccurring theme for me over the years since I've been on the school board, and it really surrounds the lack of calling out in interaction with parents. And the theme still continues today. I love that there's all this effort for CBOs, but there's a significant portion of our population that don't have interaction or connections to CBOs. And I think that there's a large portion of our population that experience poverty that really definitely struggled in the last year with COVID. And so I don't know how you're going to empower them to engage, but I would encourage you to work towards asking them to engage in really sharing what their children's experience was like and what they recommend to help achieve those opportunities of filling that learning gap. In my own experience, and I don't experience poverty, thankfully, but I have struggled to connect with my own kids' schools on a regular basis. And so I know that they're trying, but you have opportunities right now to help them, help us. And I'd really like to see a focus go to parent guardians to allow them and invite them to engage outside of having to be connected to another organization.
Yeah, I appreciate that suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'm a big proponent of family engagement, parent engagement, as I believe that as parents, we are our kids' first teachers. Director Carson-Cunningham?
Thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation, Dr. West. It's really impressive what you have planned. Just a technical question. So are all of the funds obligated for the first two ESSERs? Or is this a presentation on everything, including ESSER 3? Because those dates are still, a ways out for the obligation and then expenditure. So that was just a technical question. Well, I'll let you answer that first. I have a couple more.
Yeah, that's great, and I'm glad you asked. So ESSER 1 is obligated. Those funds are expended. Again, that was the very first, that was the CARES Act. So we've already utilized those funds to pay for COVID-related expenses. ESSER 2, we do have plans for. Not all of those monies are expended yet. We're still in the midst of working through what that looks like, but we do have plans to use many of those monies, and primarily under the banner of continuity of operations. So we are using a strategy of moving many of our general fund expenses, not many, some of our general fund expenses into ESSER where allowable so that we can save general fund expenses to save jobs. A $9.3 billion budget is not where we need to be for the biennium. So we are concerned about what the next 2 years look like and the 2 years after that. So that is part of our strategy is to be very judicious in how we utilize, especially ESSER 2, to save some general fund monies in the long run, again, as allowable. The focus on ESSER 3 is because of that very unique criteria in ESSER 3 that doesn't exist in ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 to specifically address unfinished learning. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Just a couple example of some operational expenses too is our district health authority, our lead nurse, a couple additional nurses are in those funds, some expansion of school-based health assistants, additional LPNs. Those are just some examples of some of the additional operations as well as really preserving jobs within the Gen Fund.
Sure, and hotspots for families that need them, paying Comcast bills to, so many of those expenses are in there.
That makes sense.
Dr. West, hold on, she's Director Carson still speaking.
Oh, sorry.
Just a couple more things. To build on what Director Guzman-Ortiz was talking about, I believe, I wondered if you would have a specific outreach and engagement strategy around the RFP prior to it being posted, so you're avoiding any of those pesky procurement laws, to really make sure that you've cast a very wide net before it's posted, and can we be helpful in kind of getting the word out, talking up this great and new opportunity in any way?
Great question. And I'll just publicly say we don't work around procurement laws, ever.
Poor Mike. That was good. Really good answer.
Yeah.
And I wasn't suggesting that you do
Yes.
so.
Yeah, I just couldn't help teasing my friend here. What we can do with RFPs and what we do regularly is we do specific outreach at the time the RFP is posted. So what we are allowed to do is pick up the phone and call the Boys and Girls Club and say, hey, we just posted an RFP for this type of service, and we think that you might be able to provide it. If you're interested, here's how you find it. Can I send you the link? Love for you to take a look at it. So we can and we do that. In fact, in our write-up as we plan these RFPs, we specifically identify organizations that we want to reach out to make sure that they know that the RFP is available if they're interested. Again, we have to be careful that we're fair in this process and not giving one group an advantage over another group. But there are some community-based organizations that we work with more regularly that we know are already doing things for our students that we would like to continue to support with these monies if we can. So that is the plan. In terms of how you can help, maybe what we can do, Superintendent Perry, is when the RFPs are available, we can just notify the board that they're available, and then you can spread the word.
The other thing is, in our communications office, one of the things we heard loud and clear in the student investment account listening sessions was around more community outreach. And so we have a position in the communications office that does specific, Jacqueline, who does specific outreach to a wide variety of community-based organizations and just partners. So they don't even have to be a CBO, it's just community partners. And so when we get the RFP, that's the other place that she will then push out to her list of community partners. I get a quarterly report on all of the engagement she's done, which we could at some point bring to the board as well. And then every month she adds to the, to her list of people, so it's growing. Yeah.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I think sometimes when we have grant funding opportunities overall, not speaking specifically about the school district, a lot of times grant funding continues to go to the same entities over and over because they're the most well-known. And I think it just is helpful to address some of the equity issues over time to make sure that you're casting a wide net, which it sounds like you are, prior to even posting an RFP, like doing that outreach, which sounds like you are.
Yep.
So, I would just, I'm happy to help, and it sounds like you're doing all the right things. I really appreciate that. My last comment was just that I really like the emphasis on supporting the new teachers, because, as we all have seen and probably heard with our own children, they have had a really, really hard year, and I don't want to see our brand new teachers run. I want them to stay. So I think that's really amazing that we're going to be really providing them a support network.
Great, thank you.
The two things we did really hear from our educators were that lower class size, primary especially, and supports for new teachers.
I think we have two more comments from Dr. Changri and Grace.
A quick question. So is there any requirement in this ESSER that suppose we give grant to an organization, is there any way to monitor that it is meeting the fidelity of what it is supposed to be spent for? And is there any reporting requirement for the organization and by our district to the federal government or whoever is monitoring that?
There will be. We don't know what it is yet. So ODE hasn't released all of their guidance specific to unfinished learning yet. It's coming in the next several weeks. We anticipate by mid-August everything that ODE needs to share with us, they will share with us. We're just in a holding pattern right now. But to directly answer your question, we're building into the RFP a requirement for reporting. So we want all of our CBOs to know up front that they're going to have to submit something to us in terms of how they're supporting students. So there won't be any surprises there. And we'll help them with templates and those sorts of things so that They're not building whatever these reports look like from scratch. In terms of our internal reporting, since we know what our strategies are, again, just this morning, this is a timely question, working with our principal on special assignment who is supporting ESSER and accelerated learning, we started to identify what are our monitoring protocols for these strategies, how regularly will we pull these data, how will we report these data, because independent of what we have to report to the state, and we'll be reporting to ODE, if we're going to do a thing in the district, let's monitor whether that thing is having the impact that we believe it should. That should just be part of our normal operating process, and so we're building that right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Grace?
You spoke briefly about behavioral assistance. You instead of having them discipline, it's more behavioral based. We're gonna provide training like that to teachers too, because every day at work, I notice that because they're in these new social interactions, you notice that some kids can become, overstimulated, or they get annoyed, or they get really tired. They're just over it, so they start acting out. And I'm worried that you're going to see a spike in discipline because teachers don't know how to react to it, or they don't have the training. So are we going to have training for teachers in behavioral?
Yeah, that is such a great question, Grace, and I really do appreciate it. One of the things that we have had conversations about internally that I'll share with you is that when we return in September, all of us, adults and students, are going to have to develop the stamina to do school again.
Right, the patience.
Because we haven't for the last 18 months. At least not in the way it will exist come September. And with that comes the acknowledgement that when there's a lack of stamina and we get tired, adults and students tend to exhibit behaviors that maybe don't cast us in our best light, right? So thank you for the question. What we're doing about that with the ESSER specifically is that we are increasing what we refer to as our Envoy coaches. So Envoy is a classroom management strategy that has proven effectiveness and is very well regarded in our district in terms of routines and processes that teachers can implement that are very supportive of students, very affirming to students. So we're going to increase our ability to coach teachers in that way specifically. We also, K-12, have engaged what we refer to as our PBIS program associates. So PBIS is a positive behavior intervention system. We've engaged them already, starting several months ago, in conversations around when we return in the fall, how are we going to set up students and staff for success? What will those first couple of weeks look like in terms of setting expectations for behavior, establishing relationships, making sure that social emotional learning is at the forefront of what we do and not an afterthought, because that will set the tone for the entire year. So we are very sensitive to that and think we have some plans in place to help us do that well. And what we will have to rely on is feedback from students like you and from our colleagues working into the school to know if the level of support that they're getting is enough.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. I was just worried about, especially those younger kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Spoken from experience.
Yeah.
I think that's all of our questions that we have for you, Dr. West. So thank you very much. And I think that behavior social issue has to go for everybody, so as students as well. So we'll move on to our next item, number 6 for consent calendar. Superintendent Perry.
All right, so for our new board members, we always have at least these 2 action items under consent calendar: acceptance of grants and approval of our personnel action items. Those are both board responsibilities, but fairly routine. If you have a question about anything on the consent calendar, when the chair calls for a motion, you'll ask for the item to be pulled, and then you'll ask your question. Ideally, I know what your questions are ahead of time, so I can be sure to answer them on the spot. But if you had some tonight, of course, between me and my team, we could probably answer most of your questions. So with that, if you just want to call for a motion on the consent calendar, unless somebody wants to pull it.
Yeah, I move that we accept the consent calendar as presented.
Okay. Do you have a second?
Are you going to do it?
Yeah, I want to pull something.
Okay.
First. Personnel actions, 6B.
So then you'll just vote on 6A, you'll take the vote on 6A, and then you let her ask her question after that.
Do you need a second on?
Oh, I'm
I'll
sorry.
second the motion.
You'll second the motion? Thank you. And then I'll open up for discussion. No questions? So everybody, now take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And anybody opposed? I hear no opposing. Motion passes.
So now back to
Now
6B.
now back to 6B. Director Hand?
So it's kind of the same question I asked last month, only the list of resignations looks even longer this month, and I was just curious if this is a normal amount of resignations for this month in the district.
Yeah, and I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Director of HR, John Bate.
Yeah, great question. We keep track of our annual hires and monitor that progress, but as most people are aware, the summer is a very busy season for people coming and going. We did an update to the data a few weeks ago, and as of that time, the trend was on par with previous years, and it will be updated as we work through the summer. So later in the summer, we'll have a more accurate picture about if we're experiencing any additional attrition this year.
Okay, I look forward to hearing about that.
And I just have a question. Do you guys do exit surveys for people who resign from the district?
Yeah. We do exit surveys, but we don't do exit interviews. And we've talked about, do we do exit interview? You know, should we implement some exit interview? We do at times. We'll know somebody's leaving for a reason that we need to find out about, and then we'll do an actual exit interview.
I'm curious, and I am sure that there's some HR law that protects this from being like public record. Maybe this survey, I'd be interested in seeing accumulation of the exit surveys for the last 6 months at least, for those that have resigned from the district. I'm just curious what the overall reasoning is, and I'm also interested in knowing if there's an increase in resignations with the district.
Yeah, that would be good to know.
Can I?
Dr. Chanduri.
So is there also, could this be accommodated in an executive session? Because I'm curious to know, is there any cultural differences in the persons who resign or how long they stay engaged? Because if our goal is to have diversity of staff, and is that data available, at least quantitative data, if not individual?
I think a great way to proceed is for you to get us to take your questions, which would have been awesome to have ahead of time, and we could have had better answers. And then we will, I'll tell you, the exit survey doesn't get a huge response. I can't tell you for sure if it's by demographics, but let us get what we have. If it's something that you, as a full board, decide you want, let's decide, is there a different survey? Is there a different process? Do you want to implement an exit interview process? And if it's an exit interview process, I'd actually ask you to allocate resources for it to do that. So let's just take it kind of one step at a time to be sure you know what we have, what we don't have, what you want as a board, and then we're happy to do it for you.
Thank you.
I would agree.
So now you'd move to.
I'll make a motion to approve item 6B of the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No. So, yeah, motion passes.
She's going to watch me now.
So, item number 7, our spotlights, is on hiatus for the summer, so we'll resume this in September. There are no readings today for item number 8. And number 9, information standard reports, monitoring data. Superintendent Perry?
All right, so these are your 2 monitoring data reports. We've done these just as written reports only.
We did not put an executive limitation report in this month because we thought it would be great for new board members to get in the boardroom first before we had our first executive limitation report. So we'll bring those forward in the coming months and we'll catch up. So the data monitoring, that's the next level of monitoring. The way we've handled it in the past is if you have questions, to get them into board leadership. If you want to change that at some point, that's great too. And then the final thing is the board meeting schedule. We are planning that we will have a board meeting on that second Thursday in July, the fourth Thursday of July. Because there's a good chance we'll have a couple even action items on the 27th. So I think there's a chance we'll combine it as both a work session and a business meeting. Sorry, fourth Tuesday. Yeah, the 27th of July. Sorry about that. The other thing I want us to think about, and I would like to think about it with board leadership, is there's been a number of requests for some learning things, and do we think about some sort of quick little 45-minute virtual meetings on one topic? Are there some other ways to kind of get information and get learning from the district? So I've made kind of a list of some of the things I heard tonight.
Director Chandri?
So if we were, just for the sake of transition to our new board, so this monitoring data, we thought if we could pool the questions and send it to our board leadership and superintendent, then then after a few questions are collected, we could have a work session so that we can understand in depth what the significance of these data mean in terms of school climate, or then we can start thinking in terms of doing much more detailed root cause analysis, and then start seeing how it can influence policy change at a district level or training, cultural changes, etc. So not to directly draw inference based on each month, but to collect your questions and then send it to the board leadership. So that way we are not reacting to every month, but kind of thinking through the questions and then allow the district to take all those questions to design a work session, and if necessary, further root cause analysis by getting community to share with about the lived experience and how it matches. Some of these data, I wanted to make it very clear, Superintendent Perry can correct me, are required data, quantitative data we have to collect as part of federal requirement. Because some of them we are collecting it. So without burdening too much, so we will start with what is already being collected in a meaningful way that can be shared. That's the background behind it. I'll be happy to kind of share with the rest of the board or write a little thing on how it came about, so if you're interested in knowing that. So that is my simple ask to our new board leadership and our board directors. So I really want to thank our district, Superintendent Perry and the team, for spending a lot of time and getting us this far, and so it's commendable work they have done, Dr. West, for teaching us what all this means. So I'm hoping for a repeat lesson. I've forgotten some. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Chandri?
Almost done.
Okay. It looks like there's no more comments. We got our board meeting coming July 27th, it looks like.
That is correct.
Board reports, we have, as you were called, 3 veterans on this board, and if there's activities that you want to share out, Director Bethel?
So I don't have a report. Well, I guess I do have a report. I had the pleasure of meeting with some families recently who called on me to ask the district to look into data specifically to the Latino population, and whether or not our Latino students are achieving the same level of math outcomes as other races in the district. My understanding from the conversation is that they're very concerned that their students don't have the same access to higher education, college, because they don't complete more than Algebra 1 on a large basis. And some of them are in different programs within the district that potentially create challenges or barriers for them to get into Algebra 2 or higher math levels. And so I promised that I would ask that, and was very certain that we would get an answer back to them eventually on the record.
That's a great question. Thank you. Director Hyan?
Nothing really much to share. I did have some meetings with some constituents, but nothing that should be shared here right now.
Thank you. Dr. Chandra?
Thank you very much, Chair Avila. I really want to say thank you very much, because I had the opportunity to work on orientation of a new board members and a wonderful dinner with 3 of them. We missed Dr. Vice Chair Carson Cottingham because she was celebrating another fun event. But on a little bit more serious note, I really want to thank Superintendent Perry, Dr. Chris Moore, and our school team. Our South Asian community went through a very tragic event, and there was a very serious tragedy that affected our community. One of the families who had just come on an work visa. And it was nice to see that entire South Asian community, both from Vancouver, Beaverton, Salem, and so many others who just reached out. And I want to thank Superintendent Perry and our district to reach out and offer the support and the crisis outreach. There are at least 5 or 6 children who witnessed the tragedy, and some have been directly affected. So thank you very much. And the support I got from Commissioner Bethel and all the resources that came is appreciated. And it personally affected all of us, and it was difficult. And it was a very difficult, tragic situation. But I want to say with that also I saw the beautiful humanity that came together. People are signed up, bringing food, staying with the family, and for the next month or 2, there's somebody signed up every day. So thank you very much, and it was very touching, and yet it was difficult for all of us. So thank you. So that's my little report besides everything else. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Chandra, and sorry for your loss. All right, so I guess I get to read what's on here for executive session, correct? Yeah?
No.
Are we done with the
Yeah, we have to.
reports?
Okay,
Your
done.
report, executive session
Yeah.
is not done in public.
You would end the regular meeting if there's no more reports.
Okay.
and
Thank
adjourn,
God.
Right,
and
Yeah.
Then you would call the executive session after people have the
I think you
opportunity.
get to use the gavel.
Okay, so there's no more reporting, so I guess I get a call
We are adjourned.
this meeting to an adjourn.
Chair.